Oh, it's Mr. McFeely.
I have seen the future, and he was wearing number 5, and I ain't talking about Robbie Grimsley, folks.
Took out the muffins, took out the trail mix, took out the cookies. They stole the monster cookies.
Wow, that's awesome. That is so awesome. Let's do some broadcasting.
Yeah. Let's do some broadcasting with our guy, Mike McFeely, on a Tuesday morning. We got a lot to get to, Michael. I don't know where to start.
Can I start somewhere?
Oh, yeah. What do you got?
So my wife, huge Beisneroob, I got to take that out of my mouth, sorry.
It's all right.
Wanted to go to Bison Fan Dance Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice crowd, by the way.
It was up at the indoor
At the indoor facility, yep. And so we were walking around there, and a gentleman came up to me and said, I watch you every Tuesday on Dom's show. And I said, well, that's very nice. Thank you. He goes, I make time every Tuesday.
All right.
I work from home on that day, partially so I can watch you.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, thank you
How
very
about
much.
that?
You are the best part of that show. You need to tell Don that you need to be on more.
Wow.
And I said, wow, thank you so much. So I'm not saying this to pump my own tires.
The audience is saying
I'm
this.
saying it to relay the words of the real people, of the regular man, to your ears.
Between that and hearing that they'd rather see my dad on than me, I'm willing to fork it over here.
You're just a facilitator of greatness, is all you are.
Just getting the ball who I need to.
Yeah, exactly. You're
dishing it out.
You're the offensive coordinator of WDAY Sports. You're just putting people in a position where they can succeed.
Position to win, right?
Well, hiding their weaknesses.
Well, that was awesome. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I love having you on. And normally you come with straight fire. Tim Polisic did yesterday about his running backs. We played that before you came on about 20 minutes ago. I'll get to that in a second. So now, with the Hunter Brosio news that came yesterday, that's on top of, we talked about Cole Wisniewski. I think you and I have done this for about 3 straight weeks now. Is this alarming to a point where this could affect the entire outlook of the team for 2024?
I don't mean this as any disrespect to Hunter Brosio, because he's a 6th-year guy, and Tim Polisic got emotional yesterday talking about it. He was like choked up. But Cole Wisniewski, when we started to learn that maybe he was not going to be ready for the early part of the season and possibly not play at all, that's the one that's, okay, that's going to change things. He's their best player. He's NDSU's best football player. And defense was going to be the calling card this year, and he was the best player on the NDSU defense. And so him to not be available is a huge deal already. That's one of those things where I'm like, jeepers creepers, oof, that's a punch in the gut for NDSU. Brosio is a fine fullback, and he's an All-American long snapper. But, I mean, if he's out, it matters, and it matters because of his leadership and maturity and the fact that he's a 6th-year guy.
I think his versatility helps.
But I think you can overcome that much more than you can overcome Cole Wisniewski not being on the field playing safety, especially knowing that NDSU has struggled at safety the last couple of years with depth and with and all that stuff.
And also knowing who they're going against in game 1, the propensity to get down the field, that's a guy you'd want on the back end.
But I know that people have been waiting for this Colorado game now for years, and you and I have been texting each other daily for the last 3 years. 3,232 days until the game. But in the big picture, if NDSU loses to Colorado, it's not going to matter in the long run. It's going to be a huge deal if they happen to win the game.
Absolutely. Yep.
I still say the South Dakota State game in October is a much bigger deal for North Dakota State as it pertains to the state of the program and this season in particular, and just sort of where they are in their history. Yep. So Colorado's a big deal. I get it. If they win, my God, it's their national news for a couple of days. But big picture, it's going to be a challenge, and the chances of them winning are not great. But after that is what is going to matter. And then I look at Cole Wisniewski and say, oof, boy, that's going to be a tough one.
You wrote about Peter Haugo. We heard Polisek's comments about it. You can check Mike's story out. It's available at inforum.com. Haugo was a tremendous high school football player at Fargo North. He was a 2-time All-State player as a both running back and linebacker at North. Matt Entz wanted him as a linebacker. I talked to Matt extensively, actually, about Peter because he saw him play because he was obviously watching his two sons play at Cheyenne. And we had Peter here when he committed. I asked him about running backs. Like, well, it'd be nice, but they think I'm best suited to play linebacker, and that's obviously where he started his short career at linebacker. But then
he might go back to linebacker.
Right.
Peter raised the possibility yesterday with me of, well, I guess I could go back. I mean,
but with Barika Penu's injury, and Barika may play in the game against Colorado, he's looking better by the day. But it underscores, I think, and we've talked about this, where the Bison running back situation is that if they moved Haugo there and he's already getting the reps that he's getting.
He is the de facto, with Barika Penu out, Peter Haugo is the number 3 running back.
That's behind TK Marshall and Marty Brown.
Yes.
Let's just say that. Is that alarming?
Yes.
Polisek certainly sounded the alarm bell there.
But if you listen to what Tim Polisek said from the opening media day of fall camp, we all kind of went, oh, okay.
Yep.
That's because he was talking about we need to get to a point where we have a running back on a poster again. And back in my day, this is Polisek talking, back in my day when I was here before, we had 4 guys on our running back squad who would be starters anywhere else in FCS. 4 guys who could be all conference. And he goes, now, we just don't have that.
Nope.
And so, and we kind of been watching that throughout fall camp and going, okay, all right.
You and I would look at it a lot at running back, yes.
And yesterday, when I think Eric Peterson asked a follow-up question to a Peter Haugo question, and Tim, in his first answer, sort of danced around and said, yep, Peter has a chance here. It's an opportunity. Maybe some guys haven't walked through the door like we would have liked, and just sort of kept it at that. Then Eric asked a follow-up, basically intimating, so is this move because Haugo is that good or because there's nobody else? And Tim...
That's when the roof came off.
And it wasn't directed at Eric.
No,
it was his way of venting and saying,
directed as running backs.
Right.
Yeah.
He goes, and he said, I quote, this is less about Peter than it is about the other running backs. Yep. And so what that says is behind Marty Brown, Barika Penu, and TK Marshall, who I don't know if any of those guys are all conference running backs either, but behind that, Tim Polisek just doesn't even like what's there.
Nope.
And he said yesterday, we need to get to a point where we have more depth and more talent at running back, and we need to make decisions to move this program forward. I went, oof, okay, okay.
There's no gray area there.
That's one we always talk about having to decipher what coaches say, and part of our job is to, sort of
parse through things,
through what they're saying and explain to fans and to readers and to viewers and listeners what they mean when they say this. There was no parsing with Polisek yet. It's like, oh, okay. No. So there's no parsing.
And that goes back to something we talked about. You and I did this last year on this dance when we both asked Matt Entz about the running back stable, and we went through it a couple weeks ago on the recruiting list on that they decided not to do that, and it's coming, I think, at least in Polisek's mind, to bite him in the rear end right now.
And we asked Matt Entz a lot last year about, well, why didn't you go in the portal and get somebody before last season?
Correct.
When Kobe Johnson left NDSU after the spring season a year ago, we asked Matt Entz, are you going to go in the portal? And Matt's answer was, I went to our running backs and said, hey, guys, do I need to go in the portal? And they said, no, we're good, coach. And that's apparently what pushed Matt to not go in the portal to add a running back or 2. I think if you were to talk to coaches late last season, that they would have told you, we might have made a mistake by not going in the portal and getting a running back, at least trying to find somebody who could help us out, because Tamarick Williams never quite got his footing other than a couple of games last year, and they just sort of struggled to find that lead guy last year.
And Owen Johnson, I know, has been brought up because I've had readers or viewers come up to me and say, "What about Owen Johnson?" I mean, he's not a number one guy.
No.
He provided a bit he provided depth, but he sustained a pretty serious injury.
Yes.
He's not going to be able to help him this year.
And he was not, like you said, I don't think he was
not
like
a number one guy.
Not an RB1, as we like to say.
You look at it, so after the South Dakota State loss in the national championship game in January of 23, Kobe Johnson decided to leave, I think, 2 weeks after that.
Okay.
Then Dom Ganella had already left in November of 2022.
And Ganella was going to be gone either. He wasn't
good. But they lost 2 running backs in the span of 2.5 months and did not replace anyone there.
Correct.
That's where we're at now.
And we've talked about this before. There was a year where NDSU did not sign a high school running back at all.
Right. That was that November of December of 22. They decided not to sign anybody.
So that it sort of left the program in a place where they just don't have the talent that they once had, and they certainly don't have the depth anymore. And that's a
deal.
Story for this year.
No doubt about it.
What we've learned so far about Tim Polasek is that he's more willing to go in the portal. I mean, he brought a guy in a week ago.
Silas Green came in, a wide receiver.
A receiver.
Yeah.
And it's too late for that now for this season, we think.
Well, school starts in a couple days.
Talent acquisition.
Yeah, yes.
But I think he's going to be more willing to go find guys. And, I mean, you look around the Missouri Valley Football Conference, and there's some good transfer running backs at other schools.
Yep.
And so you wonder, I mean, why didn't NDSU go get somebody? And it's, Fargo's a tough place to recruit to. You talk to any coach over there. Jory Collins, Dave Richmond, Matt Entz, now Tim Polasek. It's Fargo. We love it because we live here.
Yep.
We know about the success. Fargo's a long way from anywhere, and it's really cold in the wintertime.
Yep.
And so you don't just go pick anybody you want and say, come here and play football. Right. It's tougher than that. But if you're at North Dakota State, you're North Dakota State.
Right. Yep.
You run the ball 70% of the time. You're North Dakota State. Yeah. You've won 9 national championships. You have great facilities, as good as any in FCS, maybe better than anybody else's in FCS.
Yep.
Go get Tyshawn King. Go get Mason King or Mason Blakemore.
Yep.
Go get somebody that can help you. There's a million running backs out there.
Here's a conspiracy thought. Does the quarterback run game dissuade that of potential running backs?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Of the fact that how much they run with their quarterbacks. Well, what am I? Okay.
You're still running 70% of the time.
Okay.
And as Polasek has said multiple times, when he was here last time, Bruce Anderson, Lance Dunn, Chase Morlock, and was it Seth Wilson? Or they had 4 guys who were like, wow. Like these guys.
King Frazier.
Yeah. You just go, wow.
Those were all 4 running RB1s there. And then at
one point, they had John Crockett, Chase Morlock, and King Frazier on the same team.
And Bruce. Bruce was on that team too. Yep.
And now they're, hey, no knock on Peter Haugo.
No.
They shouldn't have a true freshman.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's Peter Haugo or it's Jimmy Shimtree from Dallas, Texas. You shouldn't have a true freshman as your number 3 running back at North Dakota State.
Correct. Yes.
It's different if you're Murray State, but if you're North Dakota State, that should not be a thing.
Let's break. We'll come back. We'll chat about the game day changes coming to the Dome and also UND's announcement of its starting quarterback with Mike's thoughts on that. We wrap up hour 1 on this Tuesday morning. We're back on Hot Mike right after this. Welcome back, everybody. Second half of our segment with Mike McFeely joining us. You mentioned you were up at the Bison Fan Day. On Friday, I had Cam Bastian on, who's NDSU's new Director of Fan Engagement and Marketing, and story came out on the changes that are going to happen on game day. Here's another thing you and I have been talking about for the better part of 2 to 3 years. The new pyrotechnic show that's going to happen. The helmet's going to go out into the tailgate lot.
Yep.
The Bison are going to have the team walk through the tailgate lot. There's a few other packages for fans as well.
And as I understand it, they're going to allow fans to be lining the tunnel outside the locker room out to the field.
Correct.
That's something that we see at NFL stadiums.
They did it at U.S. Bank last year when the Bison played down there.
And if they have, because now at all these new NFL stadiums, they sell these suites or these bar areas or underneath the stadium.
Right. U.S. Bank has
so
it.
that the
Allegiant
very
Stadium.
high end, the fans can stand where the players walk out of the locker room to the field and they can high five. And they did it in Philadelphia.
Yep.
And they do it at U.S. Bank.
The Raiders have it.
It was built into U.S. Bank Stadium. It was a plan.
Yep.
So that's what they're trying to capitalize on at NDSU, that's fine.
Yep.
That's a good idea.
That'll be.
I still say the other stuff like you can pay to have your kid go pick up the tee, or you can pay to run out with the team.
Yep.
That's more about generating a couple $100s than it is about increasing attendance or making it a better atmosphere. The biggest thing to me was that they actually admitted that they needed to have some sort of package besides a full season ticket and single game sales.
Yep.
And they're having a 3-game package, which has been common at every other sporting event for ever.
Yep.
And North Dakota State finally came around and said, well, okay, we're going to do that. And so I applaud them for that.
Yep.
But I mean,
why'd it take so long?
There's probably an assistant football coach in Los Angeles right now going, didn't I suggest that like 3 years ago?
Yep. I know it. Yep.
But
be that as it may.
It's at least they're doing it now.
Yep.
And the Bison are going to be helped by their home schedule this year, having South Dakota State and UND, plus a homecoming game. Towson, I think, is homecoming. That gives them 3 games that are going to be sellouts.
Northern Iowa will get people
and
here,
Northern Iowa always
That's
gets
a good
people
opponent.
here because everybody hates Mark Farley. The fans. He's that guy that the fans like to rally against. Everybody doesn't hate Mark Farley. Mark, if you're watching, he's just that guy. He's like a Greg Campy from the old Oakland basketball team.
Yep.
Except Campy had fun with it, and Farley does not have fun. No. But so that game will be fine.
Yep. Those are good ones to pick from.
And so the attendance, I think, will be better this year than it was a year ago.
Just because of the opponents.
Absolutely. And I think there is some juice with Tim Polasek being the head coach now that he's doing everything he can to get out and shake hands and kiss babies and get people to come to the Dome. So they're at least doing something. I've knocked them for 7 years now about, there's 3,000 empty seats. Oh, it's the students. Oh, it's the students. Oh, we have all the games on TV. It's your guys' fault. It's never, it's always somebody else's fault.
Correct.
And now they've said, well, okay, let's have a 3-game package, and that's going to help.
UND has named its starting quarterback, and it is Simon Romfo from Langdon, North Dakota, not Trey Feeney. And there are a few things that still surprise me. This surprised me, Mike.
This was a surprise when, Eric Peterson came into my office yesterday afternoon and said, UND starting Simon Romfo. And I went, okay, I expected it to be Trey Feeney, the junior out of Moorhead, whose father played quarterback very well at North Dakota State back in the day. I'm not close to the UND program. I talked to a few people, some of whom might know what's going on, some of whom probably don't. But so I can't say here's why. I haven't been at one practice. I'm not sure I've ever seen Simon Romfo throw a pass. I know that he was kind of their running quarterback last year a little bit. We saw him in a couple of games. He got in some mop-up time type stuff. All I can figure out is, and this is just me speculating, so let's make that clear again, is there's a new offensive coordinator up there. Isaac Frichty.
Yep.
And the previous offensive coordinator was Danny Freund.
Yep.
And Trey Feeney was a Danny Freund guy in terms of what they thought they wanted to do offensively. I have heard through the grapevine that the new offensive coordinator insists that his quarterbacks are athletes and dual threats and have to do all the things. Trey Feeney, I don't think, is a super mobile guy, and I don't think was ever really a running threat, other than, I suppose, when he had to. My guess is that Simon Romfo gives them more of that he's a threat with his legs as well, that you have to be that guy. And so maybe that was the difference. I don't know. I'll have to wait for reporting out of Grand Forks on it. That's my speculation that maybe Simon Romfo just gives them a more complete package in what the new offensive coordinator is looking for in a quarterback.
With a completely new offensive line as well, with 4 new starters up there.
Yes.
that's a challenge in its own right that they were going to walk into in 2024.
I've known Kevin Feeney as you have for a long time. Everything I don't know Trey Feeney other than I've talked to him a couple of times. Seems like a great young man. He's a spud, and so I was kind of frankly rooting for him to be the starting quarterback. And I'm a spud guy. I'm a Moorhead guy.
As am I.
I'm a fan of Kevin Feeney. I covered him back in the day. I see him once in a while. We're still friendly and chat and everything else. So I was kind of rooting for him to be the guy to wait his turn. But it looks like for now, Simon Ramfo is the guy up in Grand Forks.
That's intriguing. They open with Iowa State is going to be a tough game.
And the second game is
Montana's
not going to be much easier.
We just did their schedule yesterday. That is, and we talked about it a little bit of practice yesterday. We just talking about different teams, and UND as a stretch. We focused on the show yesterday, Mike. They don't leave the state of North Dakota for 7 weeks.
Yeah,
I mean it's unbelievable. After that game with Iowa State, they don't go on the road till almost Halloween.
Yeah.
Before they go to Youngstown.
But I still think it's going to be a challenging year for
I
UND.
Do too.
I don't think they're going to be awful. Bubba Schweigert has built a program up there. They've been a very consistent team for the last 5 to 10 years. You can't argue that at all. They just haven't been able to get over the hump. They did last year by just
they beat the Bison,
pounding North Dakota State up in Grand Forks. But then they whizzed it down their leg the next week at Northern Iowa, which is sort of the blueprint for Bubba Schweigert's teams up there. Is they just never quite can sustain the goodness for long stretches. But it's just going to be I don't want to say that it's going to be a rebuilding year because it's not. But I just think that the expectations already were sort of, well, let's get through this year, and then we'll like our young players coming up, and it will be fine. But maybe this year is going to kind of be a transition year, and I think we're going to see. I don't never seen Simon Ramfo play, so I can't make a comment on him other than what I've already speculated.
Great to see you as always, my man. Thanks for coming by. We'll do this again next week.
Absolutely.
Mike McFeely joining us here in studio. We'll take a break. We come back. We'll start our second hour. We'll get the inside dope on Simon Ramfo from the guy who used to coach him in high school. Hour 2 of Hot Mike begins right after this.